productivity, not fear, is to learn to increase your productivity with CT. This week's session is for demystifying AI, what it is, how it works, and what it means. This introductory session will break down what AI really is without any tech jargons. We'll try that. And how small businesses can use it to save time and boost productivity. We'll also cover the topic about ethics of AI, data security basics, and how to use AI tools responsibly. So yeah, take it away, Werner.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Priyanka, thank you for that intro. Much appreciated. I hope you feel a lot better very soon. Can everybody see my screen? Matthew, I'm going to ask you for a check. Good. Okay, so let's get going. So first, a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to introduce Matthew as well. So my name is Werner, as Priyanka said. I've been a business advisor for over 15 years. I head up the innovation programming at CEED. I also have my own consulting business and advisory business, and have been working with entrepreneurs for more than 15 years. Joining me today is Matthew. Matthew is the founder of a number of companies. He's a software developer. Don't hold that against him, but he's a software developer. But he doesn't just develop apps, he also helps companies adopt technology and adopt what we call artificial intelligence, AI. So what we want to do today is, and I mean, I can share a secret. If any of you feel a little bit uncertain or a bit intimidated or excited but not sure what to do with AI, I can assure you, even Matthew and I had to learn, is still learning how to use it, is still discovering what it can do. And there's still some stuff that it sometimes scares us that it can do. So don't feel alone. So what we want to do today is take you through not the hype of what AI is. Specifically, we want to help you understand what AI is, specifically large language models, and help you understand how you should use them wisely and safely. So you're not going to get a lot of hype, you're not going to get a lot of excitement today, but it's one of the subjects that Matthew and I talk about daily with small business owners. It's something that we have to keep in mind when we do work for business owners. And it's sometimes one of the largest barriers to getting business owners adopting AI. Matthew and I are going to take you through a few slides. We're going to have a few conversations. Matthew is going to bring add some real life examples, and then just to make sure everything flows well, we're going to have some time for questions and answers with about 15 minutes to go at the end of the session. So let's jump in. So the first thing that is important to understand is that AI isn't new. AI has been around for many, many years. Sorry, folks, I'm still allowing people into the session. AI isn't new. AI has been around for many, many years. Any of you using Google Maps or predictive text or autocorrect or Netflix suggesting what you want to watch, that's artificial intelligence. However, what people refer to when they talk about AI nowadays is what is known as large language models. And those are things like ChatGPT, Gemini from Google, and Claude. Now, Matthew and I aren't going to discuss our preferences. But simply because ChatGPT is currently the most widest used large language model, we're going to use ChatGPT as a reference in today's session. However, there's a big difference between Google Maps, Netflix, predictive text, and a ChatGPT or a Claude. Your previous or your established AI tools like Google Maps, they have been taught to do a specific task quietly and in the background. However, they can't talk to you, they can't adapt creatively, and they can't help you write an email like a large language model like ChatGPT can do. Large language models generate text, they can answer questions, they can brainstorm ideas, and although it looks like they think like humans, they don't. They don't have any emotions, which is a point of debate in some ways, but we'll leave that for another discussion. They don't have intuition or awareness. And not only are they different, but the main thing that we want you to take away from this one slide, and the first message is that don't look at large language models the same way than what you would look at a Instagram or a Facebook or a Google Maps or how you've taught yourself how to engage with the internet and with digital tools. Large language models is very different, and you cannot look at them with the same mindset or the same approach. So, the first thing we want to address, and this is where I'm going to bring Matthew in for the first time, is a lot of folks, they don't express it, but they think that large language models is just another version of a very smart algorithm, or that it's built like an algorithm, and it's not. So, Matthew, take everybody through, and you've developed some very well-known algorithms. I'm not going to mention them, but a lot of us use them daily. But take everybody through the difference between what a smart algorithm is, what a large language model is, and why is it important for everybody to understand that they shouldn't approach it and engage with it like they would with an algorithm-driven app.
Sure. Thanks, Werner. So yeah, an algorithm is essentially just a mathematical function. I give it an input, it gives me an output, and it's deterministic in form. In which case, if like for Google Maps, for example, if you're using Google Maps and I'm using Google Maps and we're staying in the same place in Halifax at the same time, and we both type into our Google Maps chicken, hungry, or like chicken restaurant or something like that, we should be getting the same answer. If it's the same time of day, same location, stuff like that, we should be getting the same answer. If you're using an LLM and you type into the LLM, I'm hungry, where's chicken? You can be at the same location, same time, everything else is the same, but it could give you two different answers just because these have, the models have the ability that they can learn and adapt over time. An algorithm is just your data goes into an already existing model, it computes a single answer, and it gives you an output. The difference is like with these LLMs, they store your data in a profile over time, and they can effectively build what's called a knowledge base based off of any priors, based off of any information, or based off of any form of data that you offer to it over time that it collects. So as Werner mentioned, it can adapt and learn over time.
So, and I want to make sure we all understand this, large language models learns from us. It's not just, it learns from our engagement with it as well.
Yes, it learns like anything that you offer to it, any input you like, any command. If you offer it data, like if you say here's a file, or if you start saying like if you want to do like ChatGPT has plugins, for example, so I can plug in my Google Drive, and when I plug in my Google Drive, it gets access to my files on Google Drive.
Yes, it does.
Can see everything that I do on Google Drive because I've willingly given it permission. So in that situation, it's learning from all of that, and it's going to be able to provide me more input as to, it depends on what you mean by output, but it's going to be able to give a more refined answer based on the amount of data that I have. Mind you, at the same time, here's an example of it. Is like one of my clients is an agricultural company, and it wanted some marketing done around its products. It asked me, Matt, like, what should I be marketing right now? What should be my marketing message? So I just asked ChatGPT, hey, it's this time of year, create like a newsletter email for my client. And I give it like a link to the website so it understands who the client is. It then goes and queries the client, looks up and says, oh, you should do this kind of message. And the suggestion was, you should sell roses. So I tell my client, you should sell roses because they're very popular. My client looks at me and is like, that's stupid. Why would I ever sell roses? Matt, it's January. Nobody buys roses.
In Nova Scotia. Yep.
In Nova Scotia. Nobody buys roses in January in Nova Scotia. And I went, oh. So I asked ChatGPT, why did you give me that answer? And it's like, well, people buy roses all the time in January. And I go, who? So it starts listing me companies in California. Well,
exactly.
We're not in California. So
that's the problem.
I went back to my client. I said, how do you feel about me offering up historical sales data so that it understands what kind of products sell at this time of year? And then it can craft marketing off of that. Yeah. So I got permission, anonymized the data, shipped it, boom. So that's what I mean, is that his ability to then create new marketing material based off that.
Based on, yes, correct. Based on the correct inputs.
Yeah, so it's looking at SKUs now of what works. And then it goes, oh, well, if this works, this is probably the messaging we should use based off what kind of strategic package you want to sell this in. So then it creates a message off that.
So two things that I want everybody to take away from this. Algorithms is fixed. It has a specific set of rules that it works according to. Large language models is adaptable, it's flexible. The output is based on the quality of stuff that you ask it or put into it to keep it very basic. But algorithms has fixed rules. Large language models don't have fixed rules. So in a way, the way we engage with large language models help it learn rules or help it adjust rules, or so we basically help it to kind of think in a certain way. Correct?
Yeah, like the only rules that you're going to be able to find on these LLMs are hard-coded in the sense that if I go on ChatGPT and I'm like, I love crime, I love committing crime, teach me all kinds of different ways that I can commit crime. It's going to say, well, no, buddy. Sorry, I can't help you with that.
But
those terms are prohibited.
But it's very basic.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So let's go to the next. So the takeaway that we want everybody to kind of just keep in mind here before you start even thinking about using large language models or even adopting it, don't think about it like an algorithm. And it doesn't offer the same structure or the same rules as an algorithm. It's a very different form of engagement. So let's go to the next slide. Now, all of you, I'm sure, would have know by now that artificial intelligence or large language models learn from data, then it gets refined, and then we can prompt it to use it. It goes through a three-stage process: pre-training, fine-tuning, and prompting. So that's also one of the reasons, and I'm going to keep this very simple. When you look at ChatGPT, you look at you look at so many different models that ChatGPT has right now because each of them is structured a slightly different way. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Matthew to, instead of me explaining this process theoretically, I'm going to ask Matthew to take us through this process specifically for the startup that he's working on right now called Black Anvil, which is a combination of coding, software development, what these three steps means for him as a developer, and secondly, how it helps him with what he's trying to achieve for a specific client. Now, the reason why I want to focus on this today, because first we need to understand how large language models learn and how it behaves in our engagement. And then we're going to take it to the next level. Okay, Matthew, take us through a short story in terms of how disruptive large language models were for developers and how incredibly innovative it can be from a client perspective point of view and how much time it can save you.
Yeah, like I'll explain how I kind of got into using ChatGPT. First, when I opened it up, I just did the same goofy crap that a lot of other people do, which is like, hey, give me a recipe for sourdough bread, or like just crap like that. But then I started asking it questions like, could you write a piece of code for me that does this basic task? And it would do this. This was like a year and a half ago, and it would just do it, and it would be kind of crappy. And then I would take the code and fix it up. And I'd be like, okay, that works. And it's just like slightly faster than me. So then I started asking it to do more complicated tasks, and it was able to do those. It would fail every now and then, but it would still give me code, and I could run it through and like compile it and just use it. It's getting better. It's getting better all the time. And then I'm getting better at using it because now rather than saying, hey, like I'm going to give you a technical brief that's like 4 pages to write code for me, it already has figured out what I want to do objectively. And I can just give it unit tests. And I could say, pass this unit test. It then writes code. It then uses the unit tests.
Correct. So what you mean by the pre-training part, the large language model already has a huge database of existing code.
Correct.
You don't have to write it.
No.
You need to prompt it to get the right code out of it.
That's correct. So, fun fact, just a little fun fact of the day. ChatGPT is owned by OpenAI,
yes,
who is owned by Microsoft.
Correct.
Who also owns GitHub, which is the largest code repository in the world.
Yes. So we can see the value chain and the commercial value proposition of that. Okay, go on.
So yeah, like you're starting with ChatGPT going, I don't know what you do. So then I have to start giving it information. So I would start with giving it conversations that I had with a client. I would, of course, like it's again anonymized data, but I would start talking about like, this is the client industry I want to work for. This is the kind of product I want to create. This is a research paper I found. So I'm just feeding it little bits of data over time.
To teach it, to make it learn. Yep.
Again, what am I?
Yes.
What am I trying to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
And then to that, this gets really interesting. Start asking, who do you think my competitors are? So then it starts giving me input back, and I start pruning it, saying yes, no, yes, no. It starts learning more and more to now it's at the point where, like, I asked it last week, I just gave it a link of a company, a website, and I said, write a statement of work that they get a government grant for X amount of dollars, write a statement of work that's encapsulates this much time for me to achieve this project, and it has to be inside of this much money because that's the total amount of money that they have from the government. So I'm not allowed to go over, but I am allowed to go under to achieve these goals based off of what you know for how long it takes for me to achieve these goals. And then I just did up an 8-page statement of work, shipped it to the client, get approved by government. So there we go.
To summarize this, in other words, the pre-training part, and that has already happened, it is still happening at a very large scale. This is basically where these models take all available information that is available on the internet without asking anybody's permission, because by default we've provided permission for the models to use this kind of data, correct?
That's correct. And then to that, there was a company, if you think that this sounds like a lot of hullabaloo, to put things in perspective, there was a company called Box. I know it's the most dumbest name for a startup ever, but there was a startup called Box. Their whole thing is that they're a wrapper, a generalized wrapper for all of these LLMs. So they're saying like, we'll plug you into ChatGPT, we'll plug you into whatever. They hold your environment data as an intermediary between you and them. So then they say like, we don't actually let the LLMs know who you are because we anonymize the data coming one way to the other. So that's one value proposition benefit. The other one is that they say we have plugins that can plug into all kinds of different things that these normal LLMs don't plug into. So we can just suck data from a whole bunch of different portals,
correct,
and then pipe it over to the LLM. And a lot of people go, oh, like that's kind of useful. People are like me are going, that's incredibly useful. And I would say that the company there must be a lot of people that think it's incredibly useful. They got $1 billion valuation and they're less than a year old.
But they just pulled information without everybody even knowing that they were pulling the information. the data. Now, one of the questions I have, who write the code for the pre-training portion? How does the pre-training portion works?
So the pre-training portion, from like a perspective of myself, like I'm not necessarily writing any code. I'm just using a terminal.
Yes.
And all I'm doing is
a little code terminal where you just...
Yeah. I'm just like basically talking to it. Like if I was sending an email or sending a message to like a normal person, and it understands with my stupid human words what I'm trying to achieve and what I'm trying to do. And then as it gets better, I can start feeding it output of my code. Like the big kind of icebreaker for me was I just started feeding it Python code. And then it went, oh, I know what this is. And then I just started working on it. And yeah, it just got to the point where like it's writing in like my entire backend.
Okay, so and basically, folks, what Matthew just did now is he described what's called vibe coding. If ever you heard of that concept, that's vibe coding in a nutshell. But basically, to summarize this, so as a software developer like Matthew, he doesn't have to develop code from start anymore. There's a whole depository of available code that has been developed over the last 15, 20 years that Matthew can draw from by a simple prompt. If you were to say, write me a marketing email or provide me with social media content, it's the same principle. It draws from masses of data that you've helped create, and that's available or not available. It's a debatable point. And it learns from that. So when you prompt it, it looks at all of that data that's been gathered and fine-tuned to provide you with certain output. That is how a platform learns, how a large language model learns. Sorry, Matthew, I've got another question. How was ChatGPT trained before it had access to train it for himself? I've got to read this. But how was ChatGPT trained before Matthew had access to train it for himself using the website?
So
keep this simple because it's a very good question.
Yeah. So it's called LLMs, large language models. The concept behind that, and we were doing this, like computer scientists were doing this God, like it's been so long since I did my undergrad. When I did my undergrad, like 12 years ago, there was a really cool website called Wolfram Alpha. And that kind of kicked this whole thing off, where we had a website where you could go to and you could say, solve this math problem for me. And you could type in a math problem and it would understand what you as a human are typing, regardless of the complexity of the math problem. And then it would solve it and prove its solution for you. And this could be like a y equals mx plus b versus an equation that's like this big. And it wasn't doing necessarily what we're doing right now, but it's creating what's called a knowledge base. So it's interpreting, it's taking in human information and it's being able to take it from a human and be able to compute an answer from it rather than just taking it from like a model or an output of machine or something. And then what we had to do is we had to build this part of it, the T and ChatGPT is translator. So it has to be able to understand the semantics and the syntax of all of this data and what you as a human being, what you semantically you're trying to say, and then interpret that and generate an answer for it that's meaningful. What it used to suck in all that data was the internet. The internet is a free kind of open source repository. I say kind of because there's some legal claims over what ChatGPT is allowed to suck in and what it's not allowed to suck in.
Yes, and we'll get to that right now.
But yeah, that's the general idea, is it just basically did a massive scrape of the internet and just pulled in an unbelievable amount of data and then just used that to build this model off of. So any social media comment you've made in the last couple of decades, it's part of the machine now, because that's all public.
Exactly. And that's exactly the takeaway that we want to leave you with, is that every one of these models work basically in the same way. It uses your information and everybody else's information that you've directly, indirectly generated on the internet since you started using the internet. There's different privacy laws, but the truth is they're all relatively weak. They learn from all of that data that's been generated They then have engineers that fine-tunes that data using specific techniques, a linear probabilistic thinking techniques in terms of how it puts patterns together. And then large language models, AI, learns from you. In other words, it learns from each prompt that you give it, each request that you write for it, and every engagement that you give it. That's why if some of you are using ChatGPT already, ChatGPT would tell you like, well done, that's a very good question. Now you're really getting to the center of things. ChatGPT doesn't know anything. It reacts purely on what you've provided it, and it has learned how to engage with you. Again,
those like stupid little emojis that you see on like
yeah.
you
Yes.
get the little hearts, you get the little
Yes.
globes, you get like the ears of corn, whatever stupid crap like people don't
Yes.
understand. That's all ChatGPT. Like normal people don't do that, but they understand. ChatGPT understands you get a slightly higher participation rate if you put in those silly emojis. That's why it does it.
Exactly. And one last point, and again, we're not going to get stuck on that today, is although, and again, this was a question, is large language models like a large brain? It's a large learning brain, but it doesn't have any intuition, awareness, or emotions. You can actually test it. However, the emotional part, and that's a subject for another day, the emotional part is becoming a little bit gray, because what large language models is now also beginning to learn, they're beginning to learn how to interpret your wording, your grammar, your language, how you prompt things, and it can start to determine if you are unhappy, if you are frustrated, if you are uncertain, and the answers that you're going to get is going to be based on what it learns. So let's go to the next slide and let's talk about the gorilla in the room. And this is where Matthew and I have multiple conversations with customers. And it's also where we debate the gorilla in the room subject frequently, sometimes Matthew needs to give me a bit of a reality check in terms of where large language models is going and what it is. Now, what we've done so far is we explain to you that large language models learn from human knowledge and engagement, including yours, ours. And the question is, though, how should we feel about that? It's our stuff. Never mind about proprietary rights. It's our personal stuff sometimes. It's how we behave. It's how we engage. It learns from our prompts. It's beginning to understand how we think. It's beginning to understand how we feel. So how should we feel about this? So I'm going to give you a very frank answer. Number one, it doesn't matter how you feel. It matters how you use large language models. And if that sounds a little bit harsh, let me explain it a little bit more. AI, large language models, is already being increasingly adopted. That train cannot be stopped. It's simply too late. As a business owner or want to be an entrepreneur, you have only one choice. You have to adopt AI and you have to adopt large language models. However, it matters how you adopt the large language model. So if you are still debating, should I or shouldn't I, that's not where you should be. The question you should ask yourself is, yes, I should. How should I do this the right way? Now, one of the things that Matthew and I talk about often is that if you look at the larger large language model, Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT space, that industry can develop in two pathways. There's two scenarios in which it can go. The first one is where it becomes more manipulative, less ethical, And the other pathway is where it becomes an ethical and responsible tool. At this stage, we don't know where this is going to end up at. But Matthew, again, your view about these two approaches, because, I sometimes get a little bit excited about the ethical and responsible way of where I see this go. And then you always pull me straight back to the reality and say, well, it's not that simple. So explain these two. And Matthew, make sure, give an example of how the right use by each one of us can add to either of these approaches, either
Sure.
to either of these pathways. Sorry.
Sure, no worries. So I'll start with the dark side of it and
Please.
how like some of the more manipulative stuff is being used right now, along with kind of what I'm seeing is pushback from both private and public space. And then kind of give more of a flip view of like what do I see as like a value of this in society. So an example of like how LLMs can be used, and I like the middle picture there, the robot with the Pinocchio nose on it. there is an increasing discussion about this is coming out of computer scientists, what's called a dead internet theory, which is there's a significant amount of online activity that's being measured that is not actually humans. It's just bots pushing agendas. This can be all kinds of networks of bots trying to achieve specific goals or sub-networks trying to achieve individual goals. There was like a research out of, I forget the university, I'm going to say that I think it was Simon Fraser, but there was a university that conducted a bot network on social media, Reddit, and they used it for political messaging to see if they can change people's opinions. And they were using LLMs to analyze input and create comments with the call to action of changing political opinions. And they were able to significantly do this for over 50% of the people on the board. When you're an individual person and you're acting against a large group of robots, it is really hard to tell who is human and who is robot.
And that is increasingly happening, eh?
Yeah, I'm being really bad with names right now because I'm being put on the spot. There was a psychologist from Russia that came up with a game. There's a few variations, modern variations on this game, but it's called Werewolf. The concept is you get a group of people, and everybody is told, like, close your eyes for a second, and the person running this game goes around and taps two people out of this group of people on the shoulder, letting them know that they're the werewolf. Then its eyes open, and then the werewolves like can signal to each other in some weird way that they know who they are. And then its eyes close, and then the werewolves can pick somebody out of that group to eliminate. And then they just systemically keep reducing the group over and over. And statistically, it is almost always that the werewolves win, because the other people that are not the werewolves, every round somebody gets eliminated, they can vote on who they think the werewolves are, and they can try to kick out the werewolves, but the werewolves almost always win because it is stacked in their favor. That are, even if you have a minority group that know who each other are and are acting towards a common agenda, they can almost always defeat the adversity group, which is the majority of people who are not informed and not organized against them.
Okay, so what you're telling me, that's kind of surveillance capitalism on steroids.
Yeah, because we have the ability that we can use intelligent AI networks, not just individual ones, but
correct
networks to go after specific agendas.
So explain the responsible ethical approach now, and how, if we use it correctly, how we add to that approach.
Sure. So an example, I know this is going to sound really weird. An example of an organization trying to get into the ethical space, trying with a big is Facebook. So Facebook was, I know, Facebook realized, hey, this might be a problem if people are using our website. And on Facebook, you can send call to actions to people, or you can like set up private chats where people try to sell you stuff or try to trade or like get information out of you. This is probably going to become like one of the worst cesspools for scams if we just let people on our website just run, because you can do Facebook plugins and Facebook apps that could like actually load code and do stuff on the website for you. It's probably going to be a really bad idea if we like just let people run LLMs on our website and let people just set up chat bots and stuff like that. We should probably regulate that. We should probably get in there. So now if you're on Facebook and you want to create an app for Facebook that goes out and completes a specific goal or does a specific thing, it is super duper regulated. I know as somebody that's created apps on
Okay.
Facebook that you have to get like a lot of permissions from people, a lot of permissions from businesses if you run them inside of businesses. And even then, like if you want to set up like a chatbot on Facebook now, you have to use their code. And even then, if you're using their code for their chatbot, they still have to approve it for the use case.
Okay, so that I get, that's regulated. But how would an ordinary person, a non-tech person, how can they be aware that they, or how should they be aware that they're most likely chatting to a bot, or that they're being influenced by a bot? And
Probably don't know.
And how should they make sure that they don't sound like a bot? If that kind of makes sense, because one of the biggest concerns I know that I hear a lot from a lot of business owners is exactly this. It's about the exploitive nature, the potential exploitive nature, and the exploitive manipulative nature of what large language models already is and can become. And you cannot convince them that it's not a relevant question, because it is. But you can convince them that if you use it correctly, at least you add your voice to a responsible, ethical use of AI. One last question before we go to how should we use AI when we start playing around with it, how we should do this responsibly. Just give us a little bit of a tidbit in terms of how do you test if you're talking to a bot or not? Or how can you tell as a developer you're talking to a bot or not? Because you kind of know what people are doing. So how do you sense it?
I am a computer scientist, so I do what computer scientists are good at, and we break things. So
explain.
I try to, I know this sounds really weird. I try to force it into an argument. And then once if the person or thing that I am arguing with, once we get into some kind of argument, in the middle of the argument, I will randomly ask for it to give me a recipe for chocolate chip cookies.
Exactly.
And you laugh, but I will literally have an argument with somebody on social media and they'll be like, oh yeah, well, I think you're wrong because of this, and give me a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. And it goes blah, blah, blah. And then it just starts printing me off with a giant recipe for chocolate chip cookies.
Yes.
And I go like, well, it looks like I found a bot.
Exactly. So it's something that you kind of learned, and it's something that you had to adjust again. So if any of us are using LLMs, large language models, and we feel we're not sure who we're talking to, a human or a bot, then that's one way of checking it. Start debating it and then ask it a random question and see how it responds to that. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we've determined how large language models learn, what we should be aware of, what it is, the fact that you don't have a choice, you need to adopt it. It doesn't matter what you think, it's about how you use it. So how do you start using large language models responsibly? Now, some of you would be using this already, some not, but we're still going to take you through this. And then we're also going to give you a very simple sandbox strategy that even Matthew and I still use when we even talk to folks about adopting AI, just to make sure that they have a certain level of comfort. So your first touch point with large language models is ChatGPT. There are Claude, there is Gemini. As I said in the beginning, ChatGPT is just the most widely used one. That's why we mentioned that. And the first step is just to open up a free account or just sign up. You don't even have to open up account, just sign up. It gives you a very simple white screen with a little chat box. Now, and then try drafting simple content. I'm going to go through the next two steps, and then we're going to come back how you can have fun with this exercise. So once you're comfortable with that, the next logical step then is for you to build your own little GPT. I'm not going to go into the technical because of that, it's very, very easy to do. But all you do is you upgrade your free ChatGPT account to a paid account. It's about $20 a month. It's definitely worth it. And there's a lot of instructions online where you can create your own little GPT. Your own little GPT can be a marketing content development engine. It could be an email writing little GPT where you feed it some of your social media posts. It learns from that and it helps you develop some social media posts. So again, this is just the next step. And then the third step is once you're comfortable with that, you can then start looking at using more professional or comprehensive tools, which is a whole rabbit hole on itself. Again, we're not going to go there. However, the one thing that, again, what Matthew and I discuss daily, that first touch point was ChatGPT. First thing, you can't break it. You can challenge it, but you can't break it. So you can be as creative as you want to be. You can call yourself what you want. You can take on a persona of what you want. You can become what you want in terms of the game that you play with ChatGPT to start learning it. So have fun with the first touch point. If you are planning to launch your own company or you have an idea to start your own business, ChatGPT doesn't know you from a bar of soap. But when you start chatting with it, just say, I have this idea to start this business. I haven't done this before, yada, 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 yada. What should I do in terms of how to start my business? Or I want to start a new marketing agency. Instead of asking them, I want to start it, say to ChatGPT, I own a marketing agency. How should I adjust it? So what you can start doing with ChatGPT without even starting your own GPT is you can start using it for brainstorming, creative thinking, role-playing, all kind of stuff. Matthew, I'm not sure if you're going to be willing to share this, but what kind of personas have you played around with ChatGPT? You don't have to tell me your name, but I know I know you do this.
Yeah. So the way that I have things set up is I create in ChatGPT, when you have a paid account, you can create environments. And then I create for each customer that I have, each client, I create an environment for that client. And then when I create
hold on. So anybody that has an existing business or wants to start a business, they can say, okay, these are my assumed customer profiles, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Next step. The environment?
Next step, yeah, the environment is I go in, the very first thing I do, and when I set up an environment for a client, is I take their website information and then I just ask them in the email, what information do you have about yourself that you would identify yourself by? Things such as what's your unique value proposition?
Mm-hmm.
What is your brand? Where do you consider yourself in the market? What competitors do you think you have? So just go through and try to organize as much information as I can that they are willing to give me about that. Pull that data in, shove that in the environment for them. It's kind of like a tombstone document to try to outline as much as I can about the identity of the company. When I have that, I let ChatGPT munch on that. I go to see if they have a Google profile. If they have a Google profile, then I download all the comments, like all the ratings that they have on Google profile, because they told me what they think about themselves. I want to know what their customers think about them.
Okay.
So I start collecting the information that I can get on social media, and this is building up kind of a report of who is this company? Who are they? What do people see them as, and where do they even function inside of an ecosystem?
And that is just using normal ChatGPT, no paid account, no nothing, just by doing very specific and very focused.
Yeah, the only difference is with a paid account, you can set up environments. I'm not sure if you can do that on free anymore, but
to some certain extent, you can.
Yeah, just because I have multiple clients and I want defining lines.
Oh no! We're not talking about that. Then you do need the paid account. But let's say I'm starting my own company.
Oh yeah, doing that. Yeah.
But I'm embarrassed to share my idea, or I don't want to share my idea because I don't want people to steal my idea. Then you can actually run. Yes, okay, we're not going to talk about that either, Matthew. But then you can basically start brainstorming some ideas using a dummy account. Absolutely. Or dummy names, and ChatGPT wouldn't know any better or any difference who it's talking to or about what it's talking to, except in terms of the patterns and what it starts recognizing.
That's exactly it. And to be fair, like a really weird way that the tech startups, I don't know if the other people are on this call are tech startups or not, but one weird way we used to do this as tech startups, and hear me out, it's going to sound a little strange. If we wanted to test an idea, the very first thing we would do is test a value proposition. We would have to pay like money to actually go out and do this. One of my mentors, what he would do is anytime he has like an idea for a product and a value proposition, he would just go on Adobe Photoshop. This is like 10 years ago. He would go on Adobe Photoshop, mock up what a product would look like, make a fake website for a fake business that doesn't exist, slap this silly thing on there and slap a value proposition, be like, coming soon, sign up to my newsletter if you want to learn more. And then he just never prints any newsletters, and he just does a count of how many people sign up for the newsletter over a period of time. And that's like his way of measuring the veracity of the market towards that particular idea and whether or not it's meaningful to pursue at a later period of time. But now you don't even need to do that. You can just you can literally just fire up a ChatGPT and be like, what do you think is the market research for something like this? And who would buy it and how much would they pay and what kind of comparison to just sprays information at you. And that's way better than the costly, annoying things that we used to do in the tech industry.
100% true. But now let's come to the best practices of using this process. And a few very important points to make is first, test this internally. So in other words, don't do anything that's got any external connection with customers or potential customers or anything like that. Use dummy data. We already spoke about that. Start with low-risk tasks, brainstorming, drafting reports. The last point, always manually review your AI inputs. Now, the first 3 steps is logical. The 4th step is where I see a lot of early adopters go wrong. And again, Matthew, you smile because you've seen it as well. And one of the first things I always tell folks is that you cannot hide lazy with large language models. People will see you lazy. And secondly, please do not believe everything that it tells you, because it depends on a number of things. It depends on the quality of your prompt. It depends on how clear your prompt is. It depends on what it has learned and what it has been taught to learn. Awful grammar, but it depends on a lot of things. So as an example, I would use a GPT for somebody that I know. I would use a certain prompt. It will give me a very clear set of answers. The next day, I would use the same prompt with a slight variation, and I will actually look at this and think like, yeah, you just started hallucinating because this doesn't make any sense at all. So very important, folks, is that follow that safe approach adoption guideline. Secondly, use the best practices that we kind of explain here. Test it internally, use dummy data, start with low-risk tasks, and always manually review the output. If you do all of that, you're well on your way of adopting the use of large language models correctly. So, your code of conduct, and this is the final thing that we want to leave you with. And I know it sounds boring. I know it sounds conventional. But once you start getting deeper into large language models and AI, each of these takes on a whole life of its own. It becomes foundational in terms of how you build up your own large language model skills. First is your role and job is to guide it. Never blindly trust it. That's the first thing. Always, always, always do that. Part of using large language models, you should not just protect other folks' customer data, look after fairness and transparency. You should also protect yourself in how you engage with large language models. So be very, very focused on protecting people, ethics, privacy, data, and fairness. Do it consciously. Matthew and I talk about this probably every 2 weeks. And grow with it. Large language models are rapidly developing. Get on the bandwagon and grow with it. So I had a question, Matthew. What would you say to detractors who say that AI will make us lazy and thinking on our own? Is there a kernel of truth in that? Does it make us lazy? Does it stop us thinking on our own?
I think that cars make us lazy because we don't have to walk from one side of the province to the other or take a horse and buggy. Yes. But I think that there's also another way of looking at it, which is that the more realistic way of looking at it is it increases your productivity. And that's the whole point behind this, is that I owned like the business FoodBite before my current startup, and FoodBite trying to create like processes inside the company was difficult because like things had to be carved out by hand. Then we have to like build out a process. We have to like train my fellow employees, my co-founder on like what to do. Everything took like a long time, like even just drafting documents like statements of work or project proposals and whatnot. Everything was just so much slower than what it is now. Like I can in one afternoon do like the work of what it would normally take me like a week or more
easily.
My previous startup. Yeah,
easy. I would
especially
agree
now with the unit testing that I have for code. Like before, I would like fiddle, like be on my computer just like typing in code for like an afternoon, and like get like a little bit done just because I'm like constantly running into bugs and fixing things as they break. An example of this is like a very frustrating example as a computer scientist recently happened where I wanted to build an app. This is just for fun. This last summer that went by, where I wanted an app that just for Halifax could tell me where can I get like the best clubhouse based off the amount of like clubhouse sandwich, because I really like club sandwiches, based off of like the ratings and based off how much I wanted to pay for a clubhouse sandwich. And I built like this AI that could pull menus from all the restaurant websites and just like pull down the data, look at the different menus, learn what they have on the menus, and then come up with outputs of like what I should do. That took me like a week to build. It was really crappy and it was not super accurate. Instead, I just took the data that went and pulled the data from the website and just shoved it in an LLM, asked the same question, and it outputted an answer faster and more accurate than what I was doing myself in a fraction of the amount of time. So then I was like, cool,
exactly.
I guess what's the point of me building AI anymore when I can just use this?
Well, that's the point. And I'm going to use one example as well. So as an example, before AI, large language models, for me to analyze company financials and write a report about that would take me a day and a half, 2 days. With large language models, I remove all identification data, which is just plain numbers. I load it up and it will give me a very professional analysis in literally a few minutes that I still need to check, but it makes it way more productive. So, folks, I've already had a few questions. Before we get to more questions, just remember two things. AI is your accelerator and co-pilot. It's not your autopilot. And secondly, stay curious, stay responsible, and always stay human first. Also, a little bit of a freebie. You will be getting a prompt guide from us to your emails that'll just help you, again, play around with that first level of engagement when you start using ChatGPT or GPT and you want to go into a little bit more depth and playing around it. Also, before we get to questions, you can find myself at CEED. You can find Matthew on LinkedIn. Matthew, you can even drop your email if you want on the chat box. But folks, if any of you just have a specific question that's a lot more technical than what we've discussed, because today was just to try and help you the intent of today was to help you feel more comfortable in terms of using AI, adopting AI, and to understand what you are dealing with. We can talk for 4 hours about what AI can do. That will be discussed in next week and the weeks thereafter and the next few webinar sessions.